think that this is going to be a popular video because, although it might seem a bit scattered, I'm going to be integrating ideas from all over the place, while also exposing a number of popular misconceptions. I'm going to start with a very abstract commentary on drugs. All drugs, whether their primary effect is on the mind or on the body or both. The first point that I want to make about drugs is that all drugs are essentially unnatural, even though some drugs are less refined than others. While nutrition can be greatly enhanced with science and technology, nutrition is also provided by nature and instinct. But drugs and medicine are different, because drugs and medicine are essentially unnatural, even though they're derived from nature. While discussing drugs, I want to draw a very clear distinction between things like nutrition, sanitation, and lifestyle on the one hand, and drugs and medicine on the other. Obviously, just because food can cure the symptoms of starvation or hunger, that doesn't mean that food is a form of medicine. And just because a citrus fruit, for example, can cure the symptoms of vitamin C deficiency known as scurvy, that doesn't mean that citrus fruit is actually a medicine or a drug. It's still just food doing what food does. Furthermore, replacing a food that makes you sick with one that doesn't is not really medicine. It's just a basic survival instinct, the instinct to avoid poison. There's really nothing natural about medication or drugs. And there's also a false dichotomy between the natural or alternative medicine on the one hand and Western medicine on the other. Even so-called natural or alternative drugs and substances are still a product of human technology, and they're not necessary for survival. The natural environment contains millions of different plant species, and each of these contain different combinations of complex organic chemicals, and it takes a lot of trial and error and intelligence just to figure out how to obtain and use these substances. But nature did not intend for us to use drugs. The most commonly used drugs are caffeine, a stimulant, and alcohol, a depressant. Unlike nutrition, there's nothing instinctual or intuitive about medicine or drug use. Being essentially unnatural, drugs can be useful to solve acute problems, but they will not help with chronic problems. And there are two reasons for this. Reason number one, side effects. Because drugs are unnatural, they're not part of the design. They're not part of the plan that evolution has already worked out. Therefore, deviations from the plan will produce unintended consequences. There is a desired effect which can be achieved, but it comes at a cost. Drugs always produce some sort of harmful side effect. Reason number two, the mind and body is adaptive. Because we try to maintain a state of balance and homeostasis, we are therefore prone to addiction and withdrawal when we use drugs. The original effects of a drug will wear off, dependency develops, dosages increase, side effects worsen, and over the long run, the drug user's symptoms will become even worse than they were initially. However, there are some drugs that work really well simply because they don't work at all, or because they work on a different level, if you like. These drugs are relatively safe to use because they have been endowed with the hypnotic power of the placebo effect. Like a pacifier for adults, they soothe us by making us think that we are getting something when we really aren't. Alternative medicine works its magic primarily through the placebo effect. But there's also a dark side to the power of suggestion that you rarely hear about. I'm referring to the nocebo effect, also known as black magic. Placebos can save lives, but nocebos can be lethal. The only way to counteract a powerful nocebo is with a powerful placebo. Only good magic can defeat evil magic. This is the magic of hypnosis and the power of suggestion. Even allergic reactions fall into this category. An allergy is really a type of delusion. An allergic response is your body responding to misinformation. Or I could say it's your body responding in an inappropriate fashion because it's misinterpreting information. An allergy is hypersensitivity. It's your body's false perception of a threat. Undergoing an allergic reaction is just like experiencing hypochondria or hysteria. It's just that an allergy occurs on a more physical and automatic level. Just as some people are more susceptible to allergies than others, some people are more susceptible to the power of suggestion than others. And some people are more susceptible to marketing gimmicks, invalid arguments, propaganda, and magic than others are. And some people are more vulnerable and sensitive than others. Exposure to certain smells, sounds, lights, or even ideas can trigger a negative reaction in some people, and even a panic attack, or an asthma attack, or an allergic reaction. But for these same suggestible people, these same kinds of stimuli can also trigger a very positive reaction. Picture this. A highly suggestible female is in a neutral state. Then a male enters the picture and puts her under his spell. They make passionate love. Then the highly suggestible female returns to a neutral state, and she tries to make sense of her own behavior, but she can't. Now, feminist propaganda comes along and puts her under a new spell, and she temporarily believes that she's a victim. Later, the suggestible female returns to a neutral state again, but it's too late. The damage has already been done. Or picture this. A highly suggestible male is in a neutral state, then a female puts him under her spell. He becomes a pussy beggar, a mangina, and a white knight. But then he sees a doctor who prescribes him a red pill, and he returns to a neutral state. Nature has already equipped the sexes to hypnotize each other, to put them under a spell. We call that seduction, but we are not all equally vulnerable to seduction, and we're not all sluts. Slut could mean a lot of things, but I have a nice gender-neutral definition for you. A slut is anyone who is extremely vulnerable to seduction. Of course, the word slut really only applies to women, and while people might be tempted to call a woman who is extremely good with seduction a slut, that's really not what a slut is. A woman who's extremely skilled at seducing men is no slut. She's a seductress. I think that a slut is a woman who's easy to seduce. The prostitute is the epitome of sluthood. Prostitutes don't care about who they sleep with, and they don't really require any effort to seduce. You don't seduce a prostitute, you pay a prostitute. Here's a question for you. Who is sluttier, the cheap whore or the high-end escort? I would say that the cheap whore is sluttier. In my opinion, the ultimate slut would be any woman who is so unattractive and so desperate for intimacy that she would try to sleep with any guy in her immediate proximity, and probably also pay that guy any price just to sleep with him, and then she would probably want to brag about it. That would be the most pure form of slut. Is it any wonder that the word slut is derogatory? These brainwashed feminists, the men and women who I've argued with online, are always convinced that when people use the word slut, that this is some form of moral condemnation. They view it as slut-shaming. Occasionally, that's true, but this is such a distorted picture that it really demonstrates how detached these people are from the real world. Being called a slut is really not a form of moral condemnation. Normally, it is women who call other women sluts, and when they do it, their intention is to insult and degrade a particular woman. It's no different from calling someone pathetic, stupid, ugly, or a loser, and it's usually motivated by jealousy and rivalry. It's not a moral condemnation at all. It might seem like a moral condemnation to a social justice warrior, simply because that's all social justice warriors do, is throw moral condemnations at people that they don't like. As I was saying though, the slut is easy to seduce. Seduction is power. Seduction is domination. And it's also 100% natural. Seduction is a form of hypnosis and a natural form of marketing. Nature discovered the magic of marketing long before people, religions, or corporations rediscovered it. You know, the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees. But not everyone is equally susceptible to suggestion or seduction. About 1/5 of the population is extremely easy to hypnotize, and another 1/5 of the population is immune to hypnosis. And most people are somewhere in between. Histrionic personality disorder is one classification that applies to these extremely suggestible people. The term histrionic actually comes from the word hysteria. This is your hysterical personality. This is your shallow, hypersensitive attention whore. These people are easily influenced and easily seduced, but at the same time, they themselves are highly seductive and manipulative. They are torn between their intense love of attention and their intense sensitivity to criticism. Praise them and they'll be your best friend, but fail to praise them and they will be your worst enemy. These are the useful idiot sluts that feminism currently employs. They are drones and pawns, not because they're incapable of using logic and thinking for themselves, but because they're so vulnerable to the power of suggestion. How vulnerable are you to the power of suggestion? When was the last time you had a good massage? What good is a massage anyways? Strictly physically speaking, there's nothing good about a massage. It's strange but true. A massage is really not much different from a kiss or a hug. It's just a way of showing affection, and it's another tool of seduction and hypnosis. It's a placebo. Society doesn't view massages in that way, obviously. Otherwise, you would not be allowed to pay a professional masseuse or a massage therapist. This profession will come up with all sorts of pseudoscientific bullshit about how and why massages work and what they can do for you, all the while evading the truth about what a massage really is. A massage therapist has an air of legitimacy that we would not extend to someone who gets paid to sing you a beautiful lullaby, or cuddle with you, or whisper in your ear. Many people believe that there is something temporarily wrong with their back, something which can only be fixed by way of massage. But contrary to popular wisdom, there's really nothing that could be wrong with your back that could be fixed with a massage. If there really is something wrong with your back, then a massage is not going to help. That need for a massage is really just a type of hysteria. It's a common somatization disorder. It's really all just in your mind. You really just need to relax, that's all. You just need a dose of oxytocin and maybe some endorphins. You're a drug addict. That's what you are. Love is all you need. As undeniably true as this is, though, it's also taboo, and it's not so hard to see why that is. I know that many people get their massages from a machine, for example, and that seems awfully perverse and sad to me, given my perspective on massages. Because we all know that praise and love is meaningless if it comes from a machine. I mentioned hysteria earlier, which is a defunct medical term. Originally, it was a reference to fake problems and symptoms that certain women would experience which could only be fixed with an orgasm. It was at one time thought to stem from a condition known as wandering uterus, and the recommended treatment was a vaginal massage. There's also a related term known as the Cassandra complex. I will now quote from Lori Leighton Shapira, who coined the term. Quote, "What the Cassandra woman sees is something dark and painful that may not be apparent on the surface of things, or the objective facts do not corroborate. She may envision a negative or unexpected outcome, or something which would be difficult to deal with, or a truth which others, especially authority figures, would not accept. In her frightened, egoless state, the Cassandra woman may blurt out what she sees, perhaps with the unconscious hope that others might be able to make some sense of it, but to them her words sound meaningless, disconnected, and blown out of all proportion." End quote. This is your damaged and dysfunctional woman in a nutshell. These types of problems are either caused by or resolved by sexual activity. Gee, who would have thought that all I needed was a G-spot massage? I feel all better now. Sometimes laughter really is the best medicine, and sometimes an orgasm is the best medicine too. Sometimes all you need is a cuddle or a massage, a little reassurance, or just someone to talk to, someone who cares about you. Of course, women can seduce other women, and men can seduce other men, and much of what applies to women as a sex also applies to men. My point is, though, that the only thing that could truly be considered natural medicine is love. When I get that feeling, I want sexual healing, sexual healing. I think that a more enlightened society will rely much less on drugs and much more on sex in order to promote health and well-being. It would be more honest and open about sexuality, and would be much more effective at exploiting the healing power of sex and intimacy. So here are my 5 take-home points. 1. Drugs are not natural. They cause side effects and addiction, which just leads to more drugs and more problems. 2. Seduction, hypnosis, hysteria, and intimacy are all intimately interrelated. 3. A slut is a woman who is particularly vulnerable to seduction. 4. Massages are not what they appear to be. And 5. An orgasm is often the best medicine.